Okay, so Belize and Guatemala and Honduras. We're really going to focus today on Guatemala and just barely scratch the surface a little bit on Belize and Honduras, but the focus really will be on what is the center of the Mayan world, Guatemala, and that's where Maya Trails is based in Guatemala City. And Becca, if you have any questions or want any clarifications, please just speak up and let me know.
Sounds good.
Anyone else for that matter, if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, just interrupt. So just giving you some context about Guatemala and where we're talking about, and then the history, of course. The ancient Maya, Guatemala is at the center of the ancient Mayan civilization, the peak of it, which comprised parts of southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and parts of Honduras, as you can see from the map there. So right in the middle, of course, is Guatemala, and still to this day, there is an incredible influence of the Mayan culture throughout the region. The Mayan people reached their peak in the late Classic period from 3900 AD, but it was a huge reign of rises and falls throughout over 3,000 years. And the empire stretched, well, it really wasn't a comprehensive empire. It was a lot of little city-states with some consolidation, but it stretched over 500,000 square kilometers in that region. And it really did begin its decline in generally speaking. And again, there were a lot of city-states that came and went and rose and fell, but in general, the civilization began to decline around 1760, and the last recorded glyph or writing of some sort was done in 904. Lots of warring city-states. These are theories for what happened. Warring city-states, overpopulation, environmental degradation that led to massive droughts. All of it is really theoretical, and to this point, there is no exact cause. They haven't pinned an exact cause on what led to the fall of the great Mayan civilization. Of course, the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, and that really was kind of the end of the Mayan in terms of an empire, but they really had already kind of begun to decline at that point. But as I said, the empire peaked in 900 AD, but the modern Mayan people are still alive and well in Guatemala, and there are over 23 different Mayan dialects, as you can see on that map, throughout the country. Spanish is still the official language, but over 50% of the population is Maya. So you can't go to Guatemala without having some sort of cultural experience with the modern Maya people, and then hopefully as well going to see what are the ruins of their great peak of their civilization over 1,000 years ago. Quiche is the largest spoken Mayan language or Mayan dialect, and that's spoken around Lake Atitlan, which you'll see some photos of later in the presentation. There's a little primer on Quiche if you want to practice before your trip down there. There are places in Lake Atitlan in particular, and in the remote highlands area of Guatemala, where people speak Maya and they don't speak Spanish, or they barely speak Spanish. I was a guide there about 6-7 years ago, and I used to meet people. I led backpacking trips, and I would meet Maya on the trail who spoke worse Spanish than I did, and my Spanish was pretty mediocre. So there is still very much a living Mayan culture and a lot of living Mayan languages, in particular Quiche. And then just getting you kind of oriented for modern day travel to Guatemala, again, bordered by Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Guatemala City is the gateway, and Guatemala and Belize combine extraordinarily well together for a combination itinerary, as well as Honduras. Honduras primarily for Copan, which is a wonderful Mayan ruin site, as well as the Bay Islands off the coast. You can see the Bay Islands here. If I use my mouse, I think you can see that. Lots of connections for various airlines. LA flies, Delta flies from LA. It's only a 3.5-4 hour flight. United from Houston, it's about a 3-hour flight, and Miami's only 2.5 hours from Guatemala, so it's really not very far. and there's lots of connections. Spirit Airlines, in fact, is now even flying to Guatemala if you really want to put your clients through hell. Did I just say that? No, nobody from Spirit on the line, I hope. And here's a map giving you some context of Guatemala and Belize and how well they combine together. You can see arrival gateway is Guatemala City. It's a massive city of 5 million people. There's actually quite a lot of wonderful parts of Guatemala City. It has a reputation as being just a huge, dirty, somewhat dangerous capital city. And like any big city, yeah, there are parts that are no-go and you don't want to be walking down the street, but in general, there's actually quite a bit of wonderful experiences to be had there, from amazing museums, both archaeological to Mayan textile, to a really good dining scene, and then a lot of historical monuments to Guatemala's peak in terms of its political peak back in the 1940s and 50s. A really nice pedestrian walking streets as well. So that said, most people do land in Guatemala City and fly or drive, about 45 minutes away to Antigua, which is the former capital of colonial Spain. It's a beautiful colonial city, and again, it's only 45 minutes. So most people are basing themselves from Antigua, although oftentimes you'll spend a night before or after a flight when arriving in Guatemala City, and there are some great hotels there as well. And then this is the highlands. You can see from the topographic map the highlands of Guatemala. This is the heart of the modern Mayan people. The Quiche people are around Lake Atitlan here. Panachel is your gateway to Lake Atitlan. There are 12 indigenous villages around the lake, and we visit several of those on our itineraries. Chichicastenango is the famous highland Mayan market. In fact, Jimmy's great maybe grandfather was the founder of the Mayan Inn, which was the first real hotel in Guatemala, at least in the highlands, and really kind of opened up tourism in the highland region back 80-some years ago. But Chichi is still today a wonderful example of a living Mayan market. Yes, it's also touristy to a certain extent, but it's hard to exclude Chichi from your clients' itineraries if they're going to be in the highlands on Sundays and Thursdays when the market is in session. And again, there'll be photos of all this a little bit later in the presentation, just giving you the quick overview. And then up to the north in the Petén region. The Petén is the lowlands, it's jungle, it's hot, humid, and this is where the Maya reached their peak. There's Tikal, El Mirador, which is a very inaccessible, possibly the largest Mayan ruin site in the entire Mundo Maya, the entire world of the Maya. You can only access it by a 3-day trek or by helicopter. So if you have clients that are high rollers that are really interested in going someplace that nobody else can get to except the really hardy backpacker types and those that can afford to fly in a chopper, it's definitely a very much recommended experience. It's being excavated for the past 30 years by a UCLA archaeologist by the name of Richard Hansen, very prominent archaeologist, and he is there at times, and that it is an active dig site right now. So from Flores, which is, if you can see my mouse, the gateway city, it's actually located right about here on Lake Petanitza. That's a 45-minute flight from Guatemala City to Flores. Flores is your gateway city or gateway town to all of the Petén. And from Flores to El Mirador, it's a 30-minute helicopter ride, and you're flying over the beautiful jungle of the northern Petén region. Lots of other Mayan ruin sites, Yasha, one that we'll talk about, and then into Belize, Caracol, probably the most famous in Belize, or El Pilar. And then as you can see, Belize is just about an hour-and-a-half ride across land border from Tikal across to San Ignacio, which is right about here. This is the Maya Mountains. And then if you want to combine the Keys, it's a 45-minute flight from, or less, 30 minutes to 45 minutes from Flores to Belize City, and then onward to Ambergris Key, Victoria House, very well-known luxury property there, or any of these other smaller islands in the Keys, or some of the smaller island resorts, Turtle Inn, Francis Ford Coppola's property in Placencia. It's down about, where'd my mouse go? Down about there. Sorry, the Belize map isn't great, but so that gives you a really broad overview of Guatemala and Belize. And Copan is in about this area of Honduras, and it's about a 6-hour drive. Jimmy, is that right, to Copan from Antigua or from Guate?
It's about 5.5, 6 hours.
Yeah, 5.5, 6 hours, which then you can then combine if you have clients who are really interested in archaeology. You can go up to Copan, which is considered to be the Paris of the Mayan world because of these beautiful stela, and the artwork of the site was really beautiful, whereas Tikal, they call it the New York of the Mayan world because of these huge grand temples. So if you want to see Paris and New York in the Mayan world, you've got to go to Copan and Tikal. 5.5-hour drive to Copan, several very nice properties there. And then you can actually drive back through Guatemala through Lake Isabel, which is a beautiful river and lake area, and then up through the Petén to Tikal and Yashad. There are several stops along that way to break that drive up as well, and then continue on into Belize to see more Mayan ruins. So I'm not going to get bogged down on one slide too long. This just gives you another view of how a typical 8-day Guatemala itinerary, which is what I'm going to focus on today, how the logistics work into Guatemala City, drive Antigua, drive Chichicastenango, drive, and that's from Antigua to Chichi is a 2.5-hour drive. From Chichi down to the lake is another hour, hour and a half, depending on traffic and time. This is the Pan American Highway from from Guatemala City all the way, near Chichi. Near the turnoff to Chichi is a 4-lane, fully paved, very safe highway, and then down to Lake Atitlan, also all paved. So your travel times have been cut considerably in the last 5 or 10 years since they've paved those roads and made them 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way. And then back to Antigua or Guatemala City, and then flying up to Flores. There is a bus. I don't recommend it for the least of my brothers. It's a long overnight journey. It's only a 45-minute flight. Avianca flies that. It's about $250 round trip, roughly speaking. And then from Flores, you're driving to Tikal about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on, 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on where you're staying. Yasha, another beautiful ruin site. And then from there to Belize, as I said, you can add that in. And you can see on the map on the right here where Copan is in Honduras. So health and safety, important thing to cover when you're talking about anywhere in the world. Certainly Central America has its reputation or had its issues in the 80s with the Iran-Contra and Nicaragua, and Guatemala had a very terrible and very sad civil war for 30 years, really, from about the mid-60s until 1996 when the peace accords were signed. So the civil war is in the long past, but like any country, any city in the world, it's, you want to encourage your travelers to be smart, not to be ostentatious, and just to act respectfully to the country and to the people and take precautions. I think any good traveler, and certainly any good travel agent, is going to make those recommendations. We actually provide, Maya Trails provides a really nice comprehensive pre-departure packet which you can take and make into, put it into your format for your travelers, and it has recommendations on cultural awareness and also awareness for your valuables and things of that sort. Of course, it's always recommended that you travel with a reputable tour operator like Karen Downey or Maya Trails via Karen Downey. Maya Trails has wonderful vehicles, great drivers, and really, really excellent guides, and they keep our travelers incredibly safe. As I said, the roads are very good now, so in terms of safety on the roads, the highways have improved considerably, at least in the carretera, the Pan American Highway, which runs across Guatemala. So, and again, our drivers are very conscientious and very smart. They're not going to play chicken with a chicken bus driver. Never a good idea. Becca Well, Becca asked, are there areas that that we shouldn't go? Well, there are certainly parts of Guatemala City that are not recommended to go, and Maya Trails would never take you there. And it's being smart at night. Generally speaking, in Guatemala City, we recommend, generally all of our clients, if they're going to go out to dinner at a restaurant, we will pick them up and take them to that restaurant. Again, not that it's necessarily unsafe in the nicer parts of town, but just to exercise additional caution. Antigua actually has its own tourism police force, and so I really don't have any qualms of saying that you can walk Antigua on your own safely, even at night, in the main part of Antigua where all the hotels and shops are. And the tourism police force is there to help to take care of the tourists, and it's a very important economic driver for Guatemala, Antigua in particular. So, and then the drug trafficking stuff that has come up in the past, or is still somewhat of a problem with the border areas around Mexico. Yeah, you don't want to go there, but those are areas that no tourist would ever be going. Very remote areas. It's not in the best interest of narco traffickers to get citizens or tourists caught in any crossfire. And really, to be honest, in the last 3 or 4 years, with the new president, Molina, who's the new president of Guatemala, the news about narco violence has really dropped considerably, and I think he's done a good job of kind of clamping down on that. And in general, the crime rate in Guatemala is down considerably over the last 3 years. So, but if you ever have concerns, or you have clients that have concerns about travel to Guatemala, certainly talk to Jimmy or talk to me. I used to be a guide there. I used to ride the chicken buses, and I felt safe. Again, not something that we would recommend your clients to do for a number of reasons, but it is a very safe country, and but you do need to take your normal precautions as you would anywhere else in the world. In terms of health and safety, there is malaria in the Petén up near Tikal, as well as in the Cayo district of Belize, in the Toledo district of Belize, the southern part of Belize. Very, very low risk. In fact, I don't take malaria prophylactics when I go myself. However, obviously you would want to recommend that your travelers go to see a travel doctor, and most likely they would be prescribed something. But it's extremely low risk. And there is no malaria in the highlands. It's too high. The mosquitoes don't like it up there. So you don't really need to worry about that if your travelers are only going to Antigua and Lake Atitlan and Chichicastenango, Guatemala City, and not going to Tikal or the Petén. But again, obviously, always consult a travel doctor in those cases. Jimmy, anything you want to add on this health and safety that I missed? Or
No, you pretty much covered it all.
Okay, excellent.
All good.
And then quickly, just weather and seasons. November through April, right now we're entering the dry season. There's very little rain, warm days, cold nights in the highlands. It is the winter. Even though it's dry, it does get cool, so you want to be prepared during the dry season to have your travelers have layers. It's like we say in Seattle, you always need to have at least 3 layers because the weather can change every 5 minutes. The weather's not going to change in Guatemala during the dry season necessarily, but they will want to have, even fleece or a sweater, a warm sweater for the evenings and the mornings, because it does get cool, even down into the 40s, 50s are very common. And then during the days, it's 75, 85. It's the land of the eternal spring, as they call it, during the dry season, because the warm days are just beautiful. And then it's warm and hot, but dry in the lowlands of the Petén and the Keys of Belize. And then May and August is the green season, the quote-unquote rainy season, but it's never really, the only time it's really pretty heavy rain, I would say, is September. Would be the rainiest month. But otherwise, you're talking about afternoon rainstorms here and there. There is sometimes a little veranito, a little summer in July. And of course, today, the new normal is nothing's normal. So the weather is very, it doesn't necessarily follow the traditional patterns. But it is very much hot and humid in the lowlands and the Petén. But I think it's a great time of year to go because it is absolutely, the flowers are in bloom, everything is green, it's verdant, and the whole country is just kind of a bloom. The eternal spring goes from perfect 75 to 80 degree temperatures to a little bit warmer, but you have these beautiful spring flowers and everything looks green and lush. So, and as I said, September and October, in particular September, the heaviest rains, and hurricanes are something to think about, in particular for Belize, and that's the peak of hurricane season. But again, nothing is normal anymore, so just be aware of the generalities of the seasons. This is just a topographic map to give you an idea of how the weather is influenced by the topography. You see the north up here. This is the Petén region, lowland jungles. There's Lake Petanitza, Tikal is somewhere over here. Yashad, I think, is there. This is the highlands. These are very high mountains, up to 14,000 foot peaks in Guatemala. There are 33 volcanoes, 3 of which are active in this little spine of volcanic activity. Lake Atitlan has 3 volcanoes around it, and Antigua has 3 volcanoes around it as well. And then this is the lowland area along the coast. One thing Guatemala doesn't really have to offer is great beaches. There are some beach destinations, but they're really not they're not Nicaragua or Costa Rica or Panama for that matter. If you want to do the beach, we would recommend you either go to Honduras, to the Bay Islands, or to Belize to do your water sports activities and your beach time. And just quickly, Maya Trails, been around 25 years of experience. Jimmy comes from, as I said, a family that's been involved in tourism for a long time, and Jimmy's been involved his whole life. And he went from a larger tour operator to founding Maya Trails in 2006, 7? Is that right, Jimmy?
2006.
2006, and the focus really is on FIT tailor-made arrangements with unique itineraries, custom designed for the interests and the budgets of your traveler. They cover Guatemala as obviously their specialty, their home, but also Belize and Honduras as a DMC. And Jimmy's partner, the manager of Maya Trails, Annie Godoy, is a former guide, and so she is incredibly knowledgeable about everything from, you don't want to book this room in Ponce Verde because it's too close to the restaurant, to the families that we work with to do these really unique, authentic coffee tours near Antigua. So it's a really good team, a small team, about 7 or 8 in the office, and you work with a consultant directly. But Jimmy and Annie are always available, and if you're not working directly with Jimmy, then he's plugged into what's happening with his team, because they're all they're all right there, and Jimmy's definitely involved in the business. You can see the list of their services, but really they serve as a DMC for those 3 regions. And really what makes them different, as I said, is their signature tours, which I think Becca has all of those that are examples of what they can do, but they tailor-make everything. They're owned and operated by Guatemalans with extensive travel service. They hire great guides. Their sales staff is excellent. They understand that time is money, and the need for speed of North American, the North American trade. They are trade focused in that they are not going out and seeking direct consumer business. The only consumer business they do is a little bit in Guatemala with local Guatemalans. So they are 100% trade focused in North America. Like I said, Jimmy's on hand to help with sales and operations, and in some cases manage quotes himself. Small and personalized team, creativity. Their tagline says it all, really, which is to escape the usual, because there is a usual Guatemala tourist trail, and not that we are saying don't do that, because the usual trail is very good and there's a lot of rich experiences to be had, but looking for unique things that kind of get you away from the umbrella toting bigger groups, which you do see on occasion, but we try to get people away from those so they have a real customized experience. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we're already half hour in, but sustainability is a big important thing for Maya Trails, both from a human standpoint and an environmental standpoint. They can carbon offset if that's important to you guys or to your clients, and that's done with a local Guatemalan organization that actually helps to provide more efficient stoves for the indigenous Maya communities throughout the highlands in particular, which is a great way to reduce deforestation you plant trees, and those trees may or may not live, but you give a Maya family a new stove that is more efficient and that burns less wood, but still is very effective, and they will have to cut down less wood. So and it happens, and it's in Guatemala, so Jimmy and Annie and their team can literally go see, and in fact your clients can go and participate if they want in giving and installing a stove with a family. So it's not planting trees in some remote corner of the Amazon. It's really happening right there in Guatemala. Definitely ask Jimmy about that if you want your clients to either offset or to contribute a stove or to participate in actually installing that stove. That's all possible. So why Guatemala? Well, first and foremost, well, maybe not first and foremost, but they're all important. The colonial history of Guatemala is amazing, and as I said, Antigua was the Spanish, the capital of colonial Spain, and still to this day there are amazing ruins. The capital was moved in 1776 after a very large earthquake, and a series of large earthquakes was moved to Guatemala City. But still today, you can see this is a ruin of an old cathedral. The streets are cobblestone, beautiful colors, kind of a Mediterranean feel. This is the Arc de Capuchinas, which is a former convent for cloistered nuns, and they had to cross the street by going through the arch there. So it has a real wonderful feel. It's one of those places that we recommend you go with a guide, get a sense of it, go do some activities, and then spend an afternoon just allowing yourself or your guests to explore. And it's okay to get lost. It's a very safe place, and there will undoubtedly be some really unique things that you discover while strolling the streets. It also is surrounded by 3 volcanoes, so it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. As you'll see in some of the properties, most of the boutique hotels have terraces, roof decks, where you can see the view over the town, as well as see the volcanoes around the city. One of them is active, Fuego, so it depends on when you're there, but Fuego is often puffing away. It's quite a distance away, so it's not a danger by any means, but it's really a beautiful sight to see, and kind of an exciting sight to see for travelers. I think probably first and foremost, why Guatemala? Personally, it's the Mayan culture. As I said, 50% or over 50% of the population is still indigenous Maya to this day, and the Maya have an amazing culture that stretches back, as you saw, millenniums. But to this day, these things, their traditions of weaving both tapestries as well as blouses and skirts are in practice today, and you can really participate either taking a weaving class or just going to observe how the backstrap loom is used. It's definitely very participatory, and it's real. These women dressed here in their huipiles, in their cortes, their traditional dress, they're not doing that because the tourists are there. This is their life. This is how they live, and it never really feels unauthentic or staged by any means. In Guatemala, especially the way Maya Trails does it, where you're really getting off of the traditional beaten path, as I said. And then you have this amazing syncretism between Catholicism and Mayan spirituality. This is an example. This is a folk saint, a pagan folk saint called Maximon, that in Santiago de Atitlan on the lake, that people actually come. This is a medicine man who's come to give an offering for a new business, I believe, to Maximon. And this gentleman next to Maximon, actually, his job for the entire year is to care for Maximon, to manage the tourists that do come, because it has become a tourist attraction. But really, it's a very somber and real honor to be the one caring for Maximon for the year. You also have to keep his rum filled and his cigar lit. I think there's a video after this that I'll play a little bit up so you can just get a little flavor of this. But tourists can come here. They do have to pay money, and they have to kind of stay out of the way, because it's a living, real experience for the local Maya in this community.
This guy here praying, he's a shaman medicine. He's doing this ceremony for a business. One of the persons in the business. volcán, none whole lead, none whole قبائل volcanic, and none whole قبائل لا. مشمعون الموضوع مشمعون volcán में volcán. يعني الجبل ملكة ضمير أمزو تشيروتشوش أمزو قبائل تشيش بركاتي مبرنكين أجمزا كنم شمال كارم ملكة كنتاش
So it's a little hard to hear. You can hear Dolores, who is one of the Maya Trails guides and one of the best guides I've ever had in the background describing what's happening. But as you can see behind Mashimon in that video, there are other syncretic examples of Catholic saints that are venerated in that shrine, and there are other examples that are really very much tied to Catholicism and to ancient Mayan spiritual practices with the sun god, tied into a particular saint of the Catholic faith. So there are really cool examples of that melding of the two religions, and that's really how the Spanish were able to keep the Maya from revolting more than they did, really, at the beginning, was by allowing them, bringing Catholicism in, but allowing them to continue to practice their own traditions in kind of a melded sort of fashion. So the other, why Guatemala? It's just the most stunning natural beauty, frankly, in my opinion, in Central America. This is Lake Atitlan, 5,000-foot former volcanic caldera, collapsed caldera, now has 3 volcanoes around it, as you can see there, and then 12 indigenous villages. About 2 or 3 of them, 3 or 4 of them are really good for visiting, and we have 2 in particular that Maya Trails likes to visit because they're historical as well as more authentic in their style. This is up in the Copan area, the Alta Verapaz, Samuk Champay. Not a place that gets a lot of tourism. This is a subterranean river that has created these limestone pools above it, so you can actually go and jump from pool to pool. Very warm and beautiful. There are hiking trails around this. It's actually a national park, a little bit, very much off the beaten path in the Alta Verapaz region, which is north of Antigua by about 4 hours. And then, like I said, 33 volcanoes. These are some of the volcanoes around Antigua. I think that is Fuego to the left, which looks like it's puffing a little bit. I don't think I have a great shot of Fuego, unfortunately. Sorry about that. And then there's lots of active adventures available, kayaking and soft adventure. Kayaking on Lake Atitlan. Maya Trails, one of their activities is to do a kayak trip. I'm going to go back here, show you and point on the mouse. This is, you kayak from Santiago, Atitlan. This is a village where Mashimon is, that video I showed you. And it's an easy kayak here along the lake shore over to this little point, Punto de Oro, which is a small, about 750-foot little hill. So you can kayak here, and then it's an easy hike up to the top, usually with some sort of either lunch or snack view over the lake. So a nice half-day soft adventure activity, combining hiking as well as kayaking. There's a lot of
Sorry. We also have the stand-up paddle boards now.
That's right. So if you have stand-up paddle boarders, which is becoming the rage, they want to do that instead of kayaking. That's also an option. There's scuba diving in Lake Atitlan too. There's a scuba diving shop. I mean, it's not like the Caribbean or Belize, but again, if you have scuba divers that want to check off a high altitude lake dive, they can do that at Lake Atitlan. You can also do easy hikes around the lake and more strenuous hikes. You can climb, the volcanoes as well. Mountain biking, this is more single track, but there's a lot of other more easy, gradual mountain biking that can be done around Antigua as well as around Lake Atitlan. The volcanoes, this is one of my favorite shots. This is Pacaya volcano, one of the 3 active ones, and very near Antigua and Guatemala City. It's become very popular for people to roast marshmallows and make s'mores over the flowing lava. So it's not a violently active volcano. It's kind of like Haleakala in Hawaii, except on a much smaller scale. But there are little flowing rivers and rivulets of lava coming off the summit of the volcano. You can't climb to the summit. This is actually down on the lower slopes. And what Maya Trails does is it's a very easy, about 45-minute to an hour hike on, not on the lava, but actually on, terra firma, up to a viewpoint just below this, where this photo is taken. The viewpoint is on normal ground, dirt ground, and we set up a lunch or like a sundowner, sunset experience, snacks of some sort, where you can watch the lava flow. It's really nice to do it at sunset, so you can see the sunset over the volcanoes and then the lava glow in the setting sun. And then if people do want to go up and climb onto the actual lava, the dried lava, and go and roast marshmallows, our guides will take them up there. It is, you have to be careful. It's definitely hot, obviously, and people have had their shoes melted. So it's something for the adventurous, but we like to do it for people that even aren't super adventurous, just because it's such a cool, unique experience, even if they don't want to go up close to the lava, to see it glowing at night and see the sun setting over the volcanoes beyond is really spectacular. And then the cherry on top really is going up to see what was the peak of the Mayan civilization. So we've seen the modern Maya in the highlands, and now going back to when they reached their peak, 1,000+ years ago. This is Tikal, the central plaza of Tikal. And if you have clients that are really keen on archaeology, or just really want to, again, be able to brag to their friends, we can bring in very prominent archaeologists. This gentleman on the right is named Francisco Estrada Belli. He's a Guatemalan Italian archaeologist, one of the most prominent in the world today. He actually has a site that's active near Tikal called Humul and Cival, and he's actually had some of the most prominent finds in the last 10 years, really, and it's actually rewriting, due to his finds, the story of the pre-classical Maya and kind of what happened and led up to the rise and fall of the civilization. Very fascinating guy, and also incredibly personable and not an egomaniac, which is not always the case with archaeologists. He's definitely very worth bringing in for VIP clients and those that have a particular interest in archaeology. He actually first visited Tikal when he was 6 years old, and sitting on Temple 4, looking out over the jungle. He said at that point he knew this is what he wanted to do with his life. And now he's about 45, 50 years old, and he still has that childlike excitement and curiosity, and obviously has an incredible depth of knowledge. It's possible also to visit Homul and Cival. You can chopper there, really the only way. You can drive, but it's really rough. But that would be for your real super VIPs and someone who, again, wants to see an active dig. He uncovered the largest contiguous or put together Mayan frieze ever found in the Mayan world. This was a year ago, August 2013, and that is still at the site at Homul, so it's possible to go and see that. Obviously time and cost dependent. He's only there, you can only go during the season when the archaeologists are actually on the site, so keep it in mind for the VIP type clients who are really interested in archaeology. There's also great wildlife at Tikal, and well, throughout Tikal, Yasha, any of these Mayan ruin sites. This is a great little spider monkey saying hello, but there's also the howler monkeys that make that demonic call. You're just about guaranteed to see spider monkeys, howler monkeys, toucans, parrots, cotamundis, and only the very, very lucky get to see jaguar, like Jimmy and I when we were there in March. We were actually having lunch at the Tikal restaurant, and a jaguar happened to walk by. It was an absolutely extraordinary experience, and one that very few people have had. So we felt pretty lucky. But it's very rare to see jaguar, but definitely you'll see monkeys and you'll hear howlers, especially during the early morning and the evening hours, both at Tikal and at all the ruin sites. And then this is kind of the African, or the Guatemalan version of the African sundowner from atop Temple 216 at Yasha, which is a smaller Mayan ruin site near Tikal. And it's just watching the sunset over the jungle and the lagoon beyond is a really amazing experience. I want to keep us on, try to do this in an hour, so I'm going to fly through a little bit of this. But the guides that Maya Trails have are exceptional. They only hire top-of-the-line guides. Dolores on the left, indigenous Mayan woman who speaks perfect English. She has an amazing story that if, at another time, talk to me and I'll explain it to you. She had to leave to go to the U.S. During the Civil War, but she's a full-blooded indigenous Tsutsujil Maya woman, but she speaks great English, so it's a really amazing, she has amazing ability to get you inside that culture of the Tsutsujil Maya. Olga is a textile expert, so if you have textile clients that are interested in textiles, she's fantastic. And then that's Francisco Estrada Belli on the right. Edwin, bottom right, he's not an archaeologist, but a really knowledgeable, both for birding as well as wildlife in the Petén and the Mayan archaeology. So you don't have to have an archaeologist take you around these sites to get a really good experience. There are great guides who can do it too. And then Jose Antonio is just an all-around dashing Guatemalteco and also very knowledgeable about the Maya and just a really good guy as well. He's on the left there. So must-see Guatemala, this is what we've been talking about, and let's take you through some properties and a few more highlights of that classic Guatemalan itinerary and how we get off the beaten path. Antigua, of course, is really where you start exploring the beautiful streets. Just a few more shots of Antigua. This is the central, or the cathedral during the day, and you can see it's just really atmospheric and beautiful at night as well. I think it's the most atmospheric Central Park in all of Central America, the Central Park in Antigua. Some place to go and sit down with a coffee or an ice cream or something and watch the world go by, the locals enjoying themselves in the park. And then the boutique properties. There are amazing value boutique properties throughout Guatemala. This is Posada de Angel in Antigua. This is a 7-room former mansion from the 16th century that's been converted into a boutique hotel. It has that flavor of the Spanish colonial style with that interior gardens. And then it also has a terrace on top overlooking the volcanoes in the city beyond. Really beautiful property. Bill Clinton stayed here in the late 90s. I meant to put a slide in for that, but they're very proud of that fact. But it's one of the best, I think. If you have honeymooners or couples who want a romantic experience, Posada de Angel is definitely should be at the top of your list. El Convento, another very nice boutique property, a little bit bigger, about 24, 25 rooms, I believe, of different levels, suites. This is one of the suites, has a working fireplace that they'll light for you. Again, it's very cool in the highlands during the dry season. There's actually a little terrace and a jacuzzi tub in the outdoors. This is a converted convent, as the name implies. They have a beautiful terrace as well where you can have breakfast or drinks in the evening overlooking the city and the volcanoes, and then a nice interior courtyard as well. Very traditional Spanish colonial feel to it. And then Casa Santo Domingo, one of the old classic hotels. It is a renovated convent as well, and this is one of the suites. It's a bigger hotel. How many rooms at Domingo, Casa Santo Domingo? 70 plus, Jimmy?
It's got 125.
125. So a bigger hotel, but still, this is one of the suites, the view over Guatemala, or over Antigua. And you can see they've integrated the original walls of the convent into the hotel. And there's actually a really great Mayan museum there as well, with Mayan artifacts. That's just a glimpse of them on the left there. So a very nice property, especially if you have a little bit bigger groups, but it certainly works very well for couples and families. There's a great pool here. So for families, Casa Santo Domingo is probably your best bet. They have a nice pool. Just giving you a little bit more context. So we're heading into the Western Highlands from Antigua out the Pan American Highway to Chichicastenango up here, and then down to Lake Atitlan after that. A little bit of a zoom in there on the Chichi area and the Lake Atitlan area. Chichi, a working highland market for the local Maya, and it has really great examples of the syncretism between Catholicism and Mayan spirituality. This is a cofradia, Catholic Brotherhood of gentlemen and women who are venerating a particular saint on the day that this photo was taken. It's also really great for handicrafts, and this is where you want to have a good guide who can get you off, can distinguish between the knockoffs and the good stuff. But it's certainly one of the, if not the best handicraft market in Guatemala. And there are a lot of travelers and tourists there, so it's recommended that you can either stay the night before and see the town the night before the market begins, or try to arrive there early before the bigger buses do arrive. Sundays and Thursdays are the market days. This is again the example of a saint being paraded through town, and this is the church that used to be a Mayan temple, and that still has that kind of temple feel to it, and in fact they do a lot of Mayan ceremonies on the steps of the church, and they actually have Mayan ceremonies inside the church as well. So probably the best example anywhere of the syncretism between Catholicism and Mayan spirituality. And this is indigenous dress, both of the women and the men, and you see this throughout the highlands of Guatemala. The men's pants actually, traditionally, they were, well, that skirt is what the Maya originally wore. Then the Spanish came, and so they could distinguish between the Maya from different villages. They helped them design patterns for each village of these pants, these trousers. So now every village has their own pattern, and the idea was the Spanish could tell if someone from Chichicastenango was in Solola because there would be a guy in the wrong colored pants. I think that may just be more of a myth, because I don't know why the guy would wear his pants if he wanted to collude with the people from Solola. He probably wouldn't wear his Chichicastenango pants. But in any case, there are specific dress for each individual Mayan village in the highlands. And then on to Lake Atitlan from Chichi. Said it's about an hour down from Chichicastenango to the lake. Adolphus Huxley called it the most beautiful lake in the world, or something to that effect. Here's the actual quote. That basically compares it to Lake Como in Italy, except that it has the embellishments of the volcanoes, and it really is stunningly beautiful. And those 12 indigenous villages, there are several that have really nice women's weaving cooperatives where you can go and learn about the traditions of the backstrap loom and weaving, hand stitching those huipiles, their blouses, and also taking classes. So you can really have a very hands-on experience. There's a beautiful pottery studio as well in one of the villages. You see this type of pottery throughout Guatemala, and this is where a lot of it is produced. And this actually was all done by men. So the women are doing the weaving, the men are doing the pottery, and there's a whole process. I don't have all the photos here, but there's a whole process that you can watch and then purchase those goods. Properties on the lake, Casa Palopo, one of our favorites. This runs about $400 a room a night, so it's still a great value. Beautiful view overlooking Lake Atitlan, very romantic. Also about 7 or 8 rooms, so a small exclusive feel to it. Here's a shot of the interior of one of the rooms. Very nice, unique decor. And then Laguna Lodge is a very ecologically friendly property, and has also, I think, 6 rooms, 6 suites, and it has its own nature preserve around it. So for active clients who want to do hiking, safe hiking on the lake on their own or with a guide, there are tons of trails that go up the side of the hill there behind the lodge. Beautiful views of the lake. And very nice, unique suites. Each one is decorated in its own individual style with views of the lake and the volcanoes. The restaurant there is vegetarian, so that's one thing to keep in mind too. If you have vegetarians, then it's a great option. If not, you might just make them aware of that. You certainly can go into town near to the closest town there is Panajachel to eat, but the on-site restaurant is only vegetarian. This is the infinity pool overlooking the water. And then up to Tikal and the Petén, the last leg of that classic must-see Guatemala. This is an aerial view of Tikal. 100,000 people, roughly speaking. That might be a little high, but in that range, at the peak of its power in 250 to 800 AD. To this date, there's only been about 10, 12 square miles of it excavated. Only 15% of the structures have been unearthed. So there's still a ton of the civilization, or a ton of the city still buried beneath the jungle. This is the view from Temple 4 where Francisco knew he wanted to be an archaeologist. And for any Star Wars fans out there, it's also the point from, I think it's Star Wars or it may be Return of the Jedi. I'm not sure which, one of them. I'm not a big Star Wars guy. But that was actually filmed by George Lucas from that very spot for some planet up in the, where these guys were landing. And like I said, only 15% have been excavated. So you still you see these big mounds, and you know that there's incredible secrets and treasures buried beneath. Return of the Jedi, the Ewok village. I see we have a Star Wars fan out there. Thank you, Trisha. I just outed you as a Star Wars fan. I hope you don't mind. Yes, Return of the Jedi. The Ewok village was in that very spot. So, but like I said, there and many of the other Mayan ruin sites, Yasha, certainly El Mirador, Caracal, there are these big mounds that house other structures that have yet to be uncovered. And it's really kind of it's a really interesting, surreal feel to walk through these ruins and know that you can almost feel the history that's been buried beneath the jungle and kind of imagine what life must have been like 1,000+ years ago. And boutique properties in the Petén, one of our favorites, Nitun Eco Lodge. Only 4 casitas built by hand by the owner, Lore Castillo. It's got its own nature preserve. It's it's a rustic feel, but very, very comfortable, clean, and some of the best food you'll find in Guatemala. Lore is an amazing chef, and it is in its own nature preserve as well. So there are hiking trails, and you can rent kayaks, or there are kayaks for use for guests. And again, it's only 4 casitas, so very exclusive area. This is the view from the dock overlooking Lake Petanitza. And then this is the newest, yes, there is great swimming at Nitun. I see you've been there, Tricia. It's, the lake is very clean and beautiful there. It's right across from Flores, which is the gateway to the Petén, where your plane lands. And most people arrive to Nitun via boat from Flores. And Flores is a nice little colonial town as well. Some good restaurants. Most of the properties in Flores proper are more mid-level or backpacker level, so we don't, generally speaking, send or have people stay there. But about a 30-minute boat ride from Flores to Nitun, a really nice way to feel like you're escaping into this really beautiful nature preserve. And then the service, Lore Castillo and her staff are amazing and very, very welcoming and very good cooks. This is the newest property called Las Lagunas Boutique Hotel. It's also in its own nature preserve. It's only 15 minutes from the airport, so it's much closer, and it's then 45 minutes or so from Tikal. There are about 18 units, so a little bit bigger, kind of in a retro luxury sort of style. They have a beautiful infinity pool. Each unit has its own jacuzzi tub overlooking the lagoon. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that the owner's grandfather was a big game hunter in Africa. So as you can see, they've decided to display his collection in the dining room, as well as throughout the hotel. There are stuffed animals, if you will. So this is, I personally think it's unfortunate because it is, it does discount some people from visiting, and it is really the most upscale property. Luxury property in the Petén, but you want to keep that in mind if you have people that would be sensitive to that type of thing. But the service is great, and the restaurant is supposed to be quite good. And again, it's very convenient to the airport, 15 minutes away, but you feel a world away. So are we doing okay, Becca, on time? I probably have like 10 minutes left. And then any other questions, or do you want me to wrap it up?
Go ahead and keep going. If people need to go, they can log off and ask.
I'm just going to go through a few culinary experiences, as well as kind of unique off the beaten path experiences. Maya Trails has an itinerary called Flavorful Guatemala, which is full of really wonderful culinary experiences. And this is one. There are a lot of options for coffee experiences in Guatemala. Obviously, it's a big exporter of coffee beans to North America and to Europe. And one way to really help to get a feel for what it's like to be a small farmer is to go and pick beans with a small farmer and learn about the whole process of coffee from the farmer himself. These are small plots farmer-owned, fair trade, shade-grown coffee plantations right outside coffee farms. They're really not plantation size, right outside Antigua. And you go out with the farmer himself into the fields to pick the beans. The beans will be ripe, the cherries are ripe between about December and March. That's the peak season for harvest for coffee. So if it's not that season, obviously you can still go out into the fields, but you can't pick them per se. But you go out and pick some of the coffee cherries. You learn about how they take the fruit of the cherry, or take the bean from out of the fruit using this contraption, this jerry-rigged bicycle contraption that separates the bean from the fruit. You then wash the beans with the farmer, and then roast them in the family's home, and then finally get to enjoy your own your own coffee from your own hard work in the fields. So a very authentic experience, and this is again, from a sustainability standpoint, the money is going directly to these families, so it really stays within the community and within the farmers themselves. So there's also coffee experience that's a little bit more traditional. La Azotea is one of our favorites right outside Antigua. They have a wonderful coffee museum that gives you a lot of context about the coffee industry and how coffee is grown and processed. And they also have fair trade. They're also fair trade, shade grown, but a little bit bigger. It's a cooperative, and you get to walk through the fields as well and learn about their different types of fertilization. They use mostly organic compost fertilizer. And then, again, on a bigger scale, this is how they dry the beans on these big decks. And you can actually go and push them into little mounds, as Gretel is doing there, and see how that works. And then on a much bigger scale, you can see the roasting process. So that's another option, and very close to Antigua as well. And then from preparing a meal or experiencing Guatemalan cuisine, chicken pepian is one of the most traditional Guatemalan dishes, and you can go and learn to cook chicken pepian from the very beginning, chopping vegetables with a local family. They actually defeather the bird. You don't have to participate in this, but this is part of the experience. And then learn to make tortillas with the indigenous women, and it's always fun for everyone because gringos don't know how to make tortillas, and the women think that's funny, and we think it's funny that we're trying to make tortillas, and it just is it's a very fun, interactive experience. And then everybody enjoys the meal at the end of chicken pepian with tortillas and rice. So a very authentic, again, family, community-based tourism experience. But on the other end, we can do cooking classes with top local chefs, both in Guatemala City, as this one is, with New Chef, or in Antigua. This is a beautiful studio kitchen located in Guatemala City. There's Jimmy. You can actually get a photo of Jimmy, see what he looks like, making some hongos, some mushrooms. So we did a 3-course meal with our group down there back in March. And as you can see, this is the dessert, so everybody's smiling. But it's a beautiful kitchen, and they bring in chefs from, like I said, top restaurants in the city as well as Antigua. So you learn from some of Guatemala's best chefs that teach you. And it's kind of taking traditional meals with a more modern twist, but incorporating traditional Guatemalan ingredients and flavors into more modern dishes as well. So that's another option. For anybody that's into spirits or wine, the Zacapa rum is from Guatemala. It's some of the best rum in the world, and there's a wonderful tasting room in Guatemala City. Highly recommended for anyone that is a connoisseur of spirits or wine, for that matter. And doesn't take long to go and sample it, and there are options to purchase some of the really rare Zacapa rum vintages there as well. We enjoyed our tasting, as you can see. And then market tours. It wouldn't, like Chichicastenango, certainly one of the biggest markets, but there are so many smaller markets throughout Guatemala. And oftentimes, again, if someone really wants a culinary experience, we can take them on a tour with a chef into the market, buy products that you can then prepare in the kitchen of that chef, whether it's at his restaurant or at a studio kitchen like New Chef. So you really get kind of the Anthony Bourdain experience. Also go and see the local comedor. This is Doña Mela Comedor in Guatemala City's market. Been there for 60 some odd years. And I totally could see Anthony Bourdain sitting down at the counter and eating these chicharrones, these fried pig's feet, and chatting up Doña Mela. But it's a really cool experience. And again, very, very authentic. This is Guatemala City, and the locals are sitting there at the counter enjoying a meal. Hidden restaurants and bars. This is El Cuartito, which is one of it was a bar that Che Guevara and Angel Asturias, who was the Nobel Prize winner for literature back in the 60s and 70s, they hung out here back in the day, and this is a really cool local pub in Guatemala City. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have this beautiful Castillo family home that they've turned into a high-end restaurant. The Castillo family actually is the owners of the largest brewery in Guatemala, so they integrate different varieties of beer into both the sauces for the meals as well as pairing it with different types of Gallo beer is the name of their brewery. Really unique finds. So that's really the overview. Just looking at what Maya Trails can do, as I said, special interest tours, textiles and handicrafts, archaeology with an archaeologist, visiting indigenous markets. There are so many more than just Chichicastenango. Comalapa, one of our favorites near Antigua, off the beaten path, many fewer tourists. Tonisipan, I mean, there are tons, and it all just depends on the days of the week, and Maya Trails can craft an itinerary that visits several of those and really gets your clients a behind-the-scenes experience. Bird watching, especially up in the Petén, kayaking and rafting, volcano climbs for the real adventurous, or that Pacaya, hike, which is very, easy for even the moderately fit. Cycling, coffee tours, golf tours. I mean, where can you golf with? There's a great shot of fuego, with fuego, a volcano erupting behind you. So Maya Trails looks for developing unique itineraries based on your client's interest. That is their expertise. So certainly anything crazy out there that you have a client that might be interested in something, certainly contact Jimmy. And then as far as their vehicles, they also own the Hertz franchise in Guatemala, so they have excellent relatively new modern vehicles, usually using SUVs for FIT groups, and then for larger groups that kind of Toyota Sprinter vans. But if you have further questions about the type of vehicle you would like your client to be picked up in, Jimmy can certainly help customize that. And then, as I said, helicopter tours are possible. I think Jimmy is correct to say that Guatemala has the highest per capita ownership and usage of helicopters in, is it the world or in the Americas?
No, it's the second largest in the world.
Second largest in the world, yeah. So there's no lack of helicopter transportation if your clients don't want to drive. You can fly from Guatemala City over Antigua, over the volcanoes, out to Lake Atitlan, and then, as I said, going up into the Petén, you can fly to these remote Mayan sites like Omul, where Francisco is working, or El Mirador, where Richard Hansen is working. So definitely very doable. And I'm not going to spend much time here. We've gone through a lot of hotels. These are just a few more hotels in Guatemala City. La Immaculada is a brand new, beautiful boutique hotel. And then you also have the Westin Vista Real. Antigua, Ponza Verde is another wonderful property, well known in Guatemala, also a renovated former mansion. And then Lake Atitlan, we talked about Casa Palopo on the bottom. Balam Ya is villas, some of which have kitchens. So if you have families that want to stay for a little bit of time and they can bring in a private chef to cook in their own kitchen, that's possible. Hotel Atitlan, more of a mid-level but very nice property, also great for families because they have a large pool. But Palopo has just renovated their pool as well, so it's okay for families. They have more limitations, I think, on ages because it is a little bit more of a luxury property and smaller. And then up in the Petén, Nitun, we talked about Camino Real Tikal, closer to Tikal, a larger 70-some room resort right on the Lake Petanitza, and Villa Maya, more of a mid-level, very close to Las Lagunas, the new boutique hotel with the stuffed animals. This is also about 50 rooms, so a little bit bigger, good for families, big pool, and very nice for a night or two. I didn't talk about, there are hotels inside the national park, inside Tikal, Jaguar Inn and the Tikal Inn, or Jaguar Hotel and the Tikal Inn. They're very much mid-level. That's the best advantage to them is that they are literally at the gate, and so if you have clients that want to not have to get up at the crack of dawn to do a sunrise tour of Tikal, for example, staying one night at either hotel. The Jaguar Inn is what we typically, or the Jungle Lodge, I'm sorry. The Jungle Lodge is what we typically book, correct, Jimmy? Your preferred hotel?
Yes, the Jungle Lodge.
And the Jungle Lodge is probably going to be renovated soon. They do have some new, suites there that we would, generally speaking, put your clients in. We can send you pictures of that. Tricia, that's a great question. We do work with La Lancha, which is the Coppola property. La Lancha is very near Camino Real Tikal. In fact, for your clients, if they want to stay up on that end of Lake Petanitza, I would definitely recommend La Lancha. And it's just a little bit past the road off to, near Camino Real Tikal. Also about 45 minutes to an hour to the Tikal National Park. And then La Lancha, of course, is part of the Coppola properties in Belize, so you could do an all Coppola itinerary if you wanted to, or if they were staying at like Turtle Inn in Placencia in Belize, or Blanca Nu in the Cayo district of Belize, and wanted to have to see the Guatemala property. That's certainly doable. So good question, yes. La Lancha actually was originally built by the owners of Casa Palopo on Lake Atitlan, and they sold La Lancha to Francis Ford Coppola, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, and now they have bought and renovated Casa Palopo on Lake Atitlan. And then Copan, we didn't really talk much at all about Honduras, but just knowing that it's 5 hours to get from Antigua to Copan, you really have, there's not a way to fly that, right, Jimmy? You really do have to drive it. There's not an alternative.
Now, there is an airstrip, but it's a private airstrip. We do charter flights. We could do the helicopter flight, but regular flights, you'd have to fly into San Pedro Sula. It still is also 2 hours away, so just driving better.
It's a nice drive as well, nice road, and but yeah, so you can do the chopper or a private charter if your clients really want to see Copan. Hacienda San Lucas is a beautiful property, as is Marina Copan. So there's some nice, and the town of Copan is actually really nice. And then from there to San Pedro Sula is another 2 hours where you could fly from San Pedro Sula to the Bay Islands if you have divers or people want to go to the beach. And then if you have golfers, there's the La Reunion Hotel is beautiful outside of Antigua. So Jimmy's a golfer, so he goes and investigates all these hotels very regularly, I might add, just to make sure they're up to snuff. So I don't know how much golf tourism you do, but that's also an option. So there was your tour in 1 hour and 11 minutes of Guatemala with a little dip into Honduras and Belize. And here's our contact information. Jimmy is obviously your primary contact at Maya Trails and one of his staff, depending on who you're working with. And then myself, as well as my business partner, Lindsay, we both know Guatemala very well. I used to be a guide there, and Lindsay is best friends with Lore Castillo, who owns Nitu Nico Lodge. So we both get down there several times a year, or at least once a year. Would like to be several times a year. And so you can always call us or email us if you want to brainstorm or just need a quick idea. I mean, you guys don't have time zone issues with Guatemala. You're on the same time zone. But we're here as a resource as well as needed. So so I'll open it up to more questions that you guys may have. And you can also email me any questions, or Jimmy, after the fact. And we'll get back to you right away. Becca, anything that you want to, I'm just looking back to see if there are any other questions that I missed.
I've got some business stuff that I'll email you guys afterwards, but if anybody has any more itinerary-related questions, now would be a good time.
And Becca, you have all of the signature itineraries that Maya Trails puts together as examples, I assume. So those are good starting points if you need them for clients to see the breadth of what they can do in Guatemala and Belize and Honduras.
Yeah, we're also working on some custom ones for our website.
Excellent. And that's I didn't cover festivals. I mean, Guatemala, as is much of Latin America, there are so many wonderful festivals. We just passed the Day of the Dead, which has a lot, every little town in Guatemala has a unique Day of the Dead celebration. There's a kite festival outside of Antigua around the Day of the Dead. Obviously, Semana Santa, Easter week, is an incredible time and colorful time to go visit. As you saw with Chichicastenango, I was there just on a random saint feast day. I don't even remember what time of year it was. I think it was in January, and there was something going on. So, we can build itineraries around particular festivals as well, or feast days that are an incredible cultural experience as well. So, keep that in mind. So, I think looks like no other questions. Hopefully that means we covered everything, but certainly feel free to call or email Jimmy or I with any further questions, and hopefully this was helpful. Becca, I think I recorded this. Yep, I did. So I can send it to you if you want to have it on file for other agents that weren't able to join us. I'll just send you a WM Windows Media file that you can utilize as desired.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Everybody good?
Thanks so much, Tad. This is great.
You bet. Jimmy, say your last words.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was awesome to have you guys there. And Tad pretty much, he covered everything. He covered the whole country.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, too.
Thanks, Becca.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.